and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. Now with the 50% tariffs that have come into effect, India and America are laying out a detailed plan on the imposition of the penalties, which it says is linked to India's continuous purchase of Russian crude and defense hardware. Many of India's export and labor-driven industries have raised concerns over the expected impact. Sectors such as gems and jewellery industry, which sends about one-third of its total global exports to America, is expected to be hit the hardest. Industry leaders have urged a look towards alternative markets as well as strengthening the domestic market to offset the projected 70% plunge for affected sectors. What exactly should be the immediate steps following the tariff war that has been waged by the American administration under Donald Trump is the big question that we ask. Kamal Bali, who's the president of Volvo, joining me on the telecast. Mr. Bali, thanks for joining us on NewsX. And of course, this was much anticipated, the 50% tariffs that have been imposed. And what is going to be the fallout in the next weeks and months in the short term as well as medium term till the time the economy stabilizes?
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I think we all know it's very disappointing that this has happened. We all know by now that India has been singularly targeted with prohibitive tariffs, or let me rather say they are more like sanctions. Frankly, I don't completely understand the reasons for the same because it doesn't make sense. But let's look at the flip side. The flip side, I think on a positive note, I mean, I think there are some challenges which it will lead to. I will come to that in a moment. But let me first touch upon the flip side. The flip side is that this could well become a trigger for Team India to accelerate things that we needed to do in any case. For we talking about Viksit Bharat, we've got a number of things to be done. We need next generation reforms. We need the industry to really stand up and on quality, on R&D, on innovation, on AI, on many fronts. So I think this will actually be a great trigger to accelerate things that we needed to do. And I think we need to do this as Team India. When I say Team India, I mean government. Government must unleash the reforms, both state government and the central government, the next generation reforms. The industry must get on to looking at more diversifying its markets, export geographies, quality, R&D, and all of that. So, and if we were to look at and I think that's something which is probably, in my mind, in my view, a good outcome of this. I think we will all get united and do things together. But I think if you were to look at the overall impact on economy in the near term, I don't think we need to worry too much about it, because if I were to look at the numbers, our total exports to US is less than 2% of our GDP. Okay, it's about $80 billion, which is less than 2% of $4,000+ billion of our GDP. And within that, almost 50% of the items are exempt under this new tariff regime. Yeah. So if you look at items like pharma, medical items, smartphones, pharma, which almost account for almost $20 billion out of 80, they are exempt. They are not falling in that. If you look at auto parts, half of the auto parts will face 25%. And half of them will face 50%. So no major impact here as well. But I think there could be erosion in our competitiveness to some extent. Machinery and parts, there will be a negative impact. But I think the real impact will come into sectors which are basically MSME, very labor-oriented, like garments, fisheries, homes, textiles, gold and silver, cut and polished diamonds. And these are the areas where we will feel the pinch in the near term.
Right.
So I think
how do we offset this loss that the country is facing, and particularly the MSMEs. You know, they're not the richest of the businessmen, they're not the richest of the entrepreneurs. How do you think the government can support these sectors, these industries? Is there a need for moratoriums that to be announced by the government, by the policymakers, by the banks? Do you think the GST cuts are going to have a positive impact in helping the economy rebound?
Absolutely. I think you are spot on. And I think number of steps will require. That's what I said. Team India has to counter this altogether. So definitely support to these industries, these segments of economy. They can be identified very, very easily, very, very clearly. Support will be required immediate now and immediately. And I think things like GST support, moratorium on loans, some interest subvention. I think some things, I think all those things which very similar to what happened during COVID. So I think we could really take some leaf out of that book, how we countered and tackled that situation. I think some of these sectors will need that kind of support from the government, and I think which we should be willing to do, because you have to really take care of the next few months. I guess I'm sure administrations on both sides will also be talking of resolving this this mess, and I think obviously some efforts will be made from both sides to. I believe that it should get. I mean, it can't remain permanently like this.
Also,
So, and in the
also
meanwhile,
talking about, you know, the country, the GDP is growing at a robust 6.8%. Do you think in the next quarter there is a likelihood of that dropping down to, I don't know, 3%, 4% before it further rebounds, before it further goes back to its normal fast-paced growth?
I don't see that. In any case, in the last few months, I think the Indian industry has been smart. They have exported to US what they've exported in the last 2 to 3 months, what they would have exported in 6 to 7 months. So I think they have already, if you see the numbers, 21% growth in exports to US, right? Against an average of 3% growth overall exports, I think 21%. So I don't think that in this couple of quarters you will see that problem. Of course, the pinch for the industries, for the jobs, for the industries, that will be immediately and now, and therefore we need to support them. But I think in terms of GDP, maybe 0.1 percentage point or 0.2 percentage point here and there. But I think some of it has already been made up.
Okay.
But at the same time, diversification to new markets. And
Yeah.
I've just read somewhere that the government is making a fabulous dedicated outreach to many other markets like Germany, Italy, Japan, and so many of them. So I think that's going to be good. So I think in the near to medium term, some of those initiatives, and that will help India's cause in the longer run. What we've been talking about, Viksit Bharat, we have to become part of the global value chain,
Right.
and not depend on one or two geographies for our exports. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Stay on with me, Mr. Bali. I'm also being joined right now by Anish Sharma. He's the CEO of Eon Interior Products. Anish, let's understand from you as well. How do you anticipate is going to be the long-term and the medium-term impact of Trump tariffs? Big industries that are going to be hit are mostly the MSMEs. And how can these losses be offset?
Look, we have seen India in COVID times, and we always find out different kind of solutions, very different from whatever the world does all about. As a country, we are full of our own resources, and we are highly independent of the world. It's just that because we are a global presence, so we have to interact, and definitely in short term there shall be some repercussions on certain markets, certain producers on MSMEs. But when it comes to long term, we shall be able to sustain. We will be able to find out what are the new markets. And I personally feel the government should incentivize the industries which are going to get hurt in some manner by way of giving them incentives based on their movement in non-standardized or non-explored territories of the world. If we do that in a good manner, we will definitely earn a new bit of market for ourselves. And it will also give rise to a lot of competencies which we have not yet seen in our own manufacturers. They will find out innovative ways beyond the realm of the industry. That is what I am very confident about.
Well,
Please,
let's also understand, at a global scale, is there a very likely, plausible possibility now that countries that are bearing the brunt of Trump tariffs are looking at each other for their mutual interests, mutual trade interests, to build alternative supply chains, reduce their dependency on the dollar, decouple with America, and come together to build a resilient economy of their own?
Of course. The BRICS nations have already started working out a strategy, but that is happening at a government level. On another level, at industry levels, at entrepreneur level, people will explore new markets, and that is what is. There is always a simple thing that adversity reveals genius and prosperity conceals it. So I personally feel these testing times will lead to a very beautiful horizons which will rise up.
Right. And talking specifically about the MSME sector in our country that is going to be adversely hit, because the maximum exports that have been tariffed with 50% of those interest rates are these MSME products, whether we talk about the fishery industry, whether we talk about textiles, leather, handicrafts, carpets. How do you think the government can come out in support of these industries, support of these businessmen and entrepreneurs from the MSME sector, so that the impact is not as hard as it possibly can be?
China has always been supportive of their industrial houses by way of subsidies. If we look at our plans, we have lesser of subsidies. We hardly have any subsidies to boast of. So at this time, when government is earning quite a bit on many other ways, including the petroleum thing, where we have been making a lot of money, and government has been subsidizing things for us to consume in India. So for the paucity, we have been doing a lot of things for last, from the COVID times till today. Billions of people have been getting a lot of food from the government. So this is the time for government to stand by their MSME producers, because they are the one who provide employment to the people, and that too a skill-based employment, which also generates indirect employment. So this is the time for this.
Absolutely. Let me get in Dr. Ranjit Mehta. He's the CEO and the Secretary General of the PhD CCI. Dr. Mehta, how should India now work towards building alternative supply chains? I do want to put into perspective the forthcoming SEO summit that is taking place, and Prime Minister Modi that will be meeting the Russian president. He will be meeting the president of China, and bilaterals are expected. Before that, the Chinese foreign minister also travelled to India just a few weeks ago. There are talks of these supply chains being opened up again. There are talks of exports that China will make towards India, imports that India is open to taking from China, particularly rare earths, fertilizers, boring machines, and so on and so forth. How will this aspect of working together with China, thawing of ties between China and India, is going to help Indian economy?
Thank you very much. In fact, when the COVID has hit the world, I think we have seen one of the most unprecedented crises in human history. So now I would say that as far as the trade is concerned, I think this is another crisis that we are facing in India, I would say that this is India's moment. With strong macroeconomic indicators, Indian economy has shown the resilience even from the COVID time. During the COVID time also, even post that, I think India was the only fast growing economy in the world. When we are ready to be the third largest economy maybe in couple of years, I think these kind of trade disruptions will be new normal in this fragmented world. This is what we believe, and we have seen that India has always thrived in the adversity, because India is currently with 65 million MSMEs. Right now we understand and we know that they are hardest hit by this US tariffs. At the same time, this is not the end of the world. We have to look for the diversified market. As India, you have rightly said that we are already aligned with Russia and China. We are building up the supply chain. I think this is the time that we need to be very, very serious about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Because without that self-reliant India, we cannot really imagine the Viksit Bharat. And as far as with China is concerned, China is having a $100 billion dollar trade surplus with India. But at the same time, we don't have much of choices right now. But I would say that one of the good things that happened is India UK FTA. And now the Eurasian terms of reference has already been, set for next step. I think that with the talks on with the EU, apart from US, we need to continue talking to US. But apart from that, we need to really look for the new markets. That is the only alternative. Plus, we have to leverage our demographic dividend. We have to leverage our consumption. We have to leverage our strength. And one of our strength is, I would say, the tourism. And that too, in particular, it is, spiritual tourism. This is the time that India needs to really brand or to be the global tourism hub of the world. If that's so, in that case, we need to make the plan right now. We need to now leverage our inner strength. That is the only way. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Also a question: How can policy changes at the top expected to bring some solace to the sectors that have been impacted, that are going to be impacted? What more can be done?
Of course, like fishery, like gems and jewelry sector and automotive and engineering, all these sectors have been impacted. I think that government needs to, because we are already in touch with the Ministry of Commerce. We have series of discussions with Government of India, Ministry of Commerce. I think they are going to work out something. I think this is the time to handhold our MSMEs, make sure that they get the opportunity to market their product in the new markets. At the same time, keep discussions on with the US. We hope that with the kind of proactive approach our government is having, we will be able to find the new ways. And this is the new normal. I would say that in this fragmented world, where economic interests have been the prime prime interest of the economies world over, I think we need to see our own interest also. We cannot compromise on the interest of our farmers, on the interest of our millions of other citizens. I think even during the COVID, Government of India had come out with the plan. We're sure that government will come out with the plan for the MSMEs who have been hardest hit with this US tariff.
Right, absolutely. And before I wrap this up, Mr. Bali, I'll come back to you and a closing comment from you about how practical is it? Is a month enough? Because I think the tariffs that have been announced by Trump came into effect today. It has been, I think, a little less than a month that the tariffs came into effect. How long do you think it is required for these sectors to build alternative supply chains? It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's not a push-button solution. There are going to be, I think it's going to take months, if not years, to establish and stabilize these export markets, whether it is in Europe or it is in Latin America or the Middle East.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is as a great opportunity for Team India. And I said in the beginning, the government, the industry, as my colleagues were referring to MSMEs in particular, and academia. So I think academia has to continue to work on the talent, in industry-ready talent. Government has to unleash the next generation reforms. This is for the medium to longer term for building a Viksit Bharat. But to tide over the current crisis, I think the GST. I think that, I mean, if something on GST can be done further for some of these sectors, we can actually open up the demand from the domestic sector itself in a very big way for the short term. And let's not forget that we have a huge domestic market size as well, of course, because of the price points. They may not be as ready to absorb the excess production which is there. But I think with reforms, with some subvention on GST, with some support on interest loans and other things, I think we can tide over the current crisis while building markets, other markets overseas, which may take a little longer time. I think in the meanwhile, I think the domestic market can support some of these sectors in a good way, in my view. Of course, we have to really do a little more homework to find out what it takes to really open up the domestic market for some of these. What alternative products can be built for India? I mean, I think we need to also understand that we have a huge uh, market of our own within the country.
Yeah.
We should not ignore that. Many times we are looking at export markets, but why not our own domestic market? We have a very large market. So of course, I mean, there are other imperatives which do not allow us to have the market size as we wish to. But I think some of the reforms what we are talking can really help. So I'm
Okay.
not really worried on the medium to long term. I think the short term measures, whether monetary, fiscal, subventions, all of those can happen to tide over the sectors which are going to be troubled. But long term, I think Viksit Bharat story is on, and I think we can move with much more compelling reasons to move forward in a good way.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Bali and my other panelists for joining me and sharing their views. On that note, I slip into a short break. Thanks for watching NewsX.